Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and today I am continuing my exploration of the BetterPress, and I've got a lot of different inks here that today's episode is going to be all about. I'm featuring the new first ever BetterPress of the month for July 2023, and we are getting off to a great start with a little bit of Christmas in July. So this is called Poinsettia Frame, and there are two press plates. You have the frame and as well the sentiment. And what I like about having them separate is that if you had something else that you wanted to put in the center, like an image or just a different sentiment, that's going to be an option because they haven't combined both the sentiment and the frame into one press plate. So I really, really love that they've given us that option. I have my stack of 100% cotton paper, and as I'm doing these exploration series, I should always be careful if I haven't been saying it consistently. I'm using not the Spellbinders 100% cotton paper that is recommended, but in my very first exploration, I tested out to compare how this cotton paper panel that I got off of Amazon compares to the BetterPress paper. It is a little bit thinner in the sense that specifically the Spellbinders panels are 118-pound cover weight and this is 110. But for the most part, there are some differences in that I was able to notice in the final pressed design, but they weren't huge differences, and all in all it still looked fabulous. So I bought this with the intention to be able to do a lot of pressing without feeling precious about the Spellbinders papers, which I do have some because both of the bundles that I got came with some. But for today, this is what I'll be using. The what I'm going to test is a variety of different inks. So I've got the BetterPress ink that was specially formulated to use with the BetterPress. So definitely we'll be using this. And we'll do that first just so that we can have something to compare everything else against. My favorite stamping ink is the VersaFine Onyx Black, so definitely need to give this a go just to make sure that I understand how this one will result. It is a pigment ink, so it should be sticky as pigment inks, as inks go. One of the benefits or characteristics of the VersaFine ink is that it is a more sticky ink, so we'll see how that works. I don't know if I necessarily want to give dye inks a go because dye inks we already know they dry fast, so I don't know if I want to do that, but we'll see as we go along. I wanted to also pull out, while we are looking at VersaFine Sudanesco inks, I did want to pull out a VersaColor, which is also a pigment ink by Sudanesco, and I also want to try, I think this will be really pretty, this Delicata red. Well, should I do red or should I do gold? I don't know. We'll decide when we get there. So I want to try those. And then I also want to try, while we're in sort of this line of inks here, I'm going to give VersaFine Claire a go. Let me see. We'll do black. This is Nocturne. So these are all pigment inks. So VersaFine Claire, the Delicata ink is a little bit of a metallic, but also pigment, and then Versacolor is as well a pigment ink, and then we do have VersaFine. So I'm going to be doing a lot of pressing in this video. That right there is already 5 that I want to try. Then let's look at hybrid inks. So hybrid inks I thought I might give a go because they are sort of a blend between pigment and dye inks. So I've got my favorite hybrid ink is the Nuvo hybrid ink. Graphic 45 does a hybrid. I have Brick Red. This is Christmas time, so I'm gonna do, I think, reds, golds, blacks. I'm gonna kind of see what I have that fits in that color scheme. And I think as well I am going to give Gina K Amalgam, which is a hybrid. I'm going to give that a try. And then I do also have, I believe I think the Papercraft Society box inks are hybrid, but I'm not going to test those only because you can't really buy these individually outside of the craft boxes. So I don't want to test something that you can't really pick up for sale individually. I've got more Nuvo inks here, but I don't really have, I have Rumba Red. Should we give Rumba Red a try? We'll do that. I don't know that that's necessarily all that different from the black, but let's give it a go just to see. So these, I believe, are dye-based inks from Hero, and these are dye-based inks from Pink Fresh. Okay, let's do one dye-based ink since I do have it in red, just to see. And I do want to say I held off on doing this because I did want to wait until I got the Ranger Archival ink cleaner, which is what Spellbinders recommends. So I want to pull that out because I want to really clean the plate well in between each of these tests. Okay, so then we've got Hero Hues pigment inks. Let's do it in black and we'll do the red. And then these Altenew inks are dye inks. So I don't know. I don't even have a color that really, unless I want to do greens. Do I want to do greens? We'll do one. So we'll just test a couple of dye inks just to round everything out. Okay, so I think those are the inks that I want to give a go. Oh, you know what? A couple more. Let's see. I've got Versamagic. These are chalk. I'm not gonna do the distress ink pads. I don't know. These are a pigment ink. They have a bit of a chalky finish. And I got this, here's the red. So let's do the red. Give that a go in red. And I think the other one I want to try, oh, I don't have a great color for this. Because this is, the Brilliance ink has a little bit of a shimmer to it, but I don't feel like any of these are very holiday. So maybe that's what we'll stick to. It's a lot. It's already quite a lot. Okay, so let me get myself all sorted here, and we'll start testing. So that's a hybrid. Let's get all my hybrid inks together. I'm gonna start with the pigment inks just because I feel like that's where we're gonna get the best success. So there's my stack of hybrid. These are my pigment inks, which I think those are all pigment, and then these are my dye inks. Okay, so I think pigment inks are gonna give us our best result, and I think that hybrids might be okay. That's my guess. I'm a little skeptical with dye-based inks, but we won't know until we try. So let me pull out a stack. You know, I'm gonna have a lot of holiday cards after this test. But you know what's great is that these are, you know, if you do sell cards at like craft shows and whatnot, imagine how fast it would be to just make up a bunch of these, and then you'll be set for your craft fair. Okay, so I've got some of the Spellbinders best ever tape. Yeah, and I am just going to tape that down. I'm gonna keep this really simple, and I'm gonna use both press plates. And you know, I love that Spellbinders has been putting their dies and press plates onto this bit of plastic instead of onto the backer board, the cardstock. It just peels off so much easier, and you don't rip the cardstock. It's really, really nice. Okay, so on the chase, still getting used to terminology. So on the chase here, we have the reference guide. So you have your A2, and you know, I like that they have A7 here. I'm wondering if at some point we're gonna start seeing larger press plates designed for A7. So that'll be interesting. Let me see if this design has I think this design has a direction. Oh, actually, it doesn't. It's the same. Oh, that's really nice. Thank you, Spellbinders. Okay, so then you don't have to worry too much about that sentiment. Okay, so there we have our sentiment. Merry Christmas. We have our frame. It's positioned within our A2 here. And I'm gonna start with the BetterPress ink. So let's go. And kind of a pounce and pivot, I think is what they called it. I should go back and watch the Spellbinders video. But the idea is to ink everything up really well, give it, rotate it around a little bit just so that you can really get into all of that fine detail. And you don't have to push hard, but I think you do want to go over each area, you know, 1 or 2 times. Well, I would say 2 or 3 really, just to really make sure, because there's so much detail in the design, and it really just depends on the plate, but there are so many details, all these little lines. You just really want to make sure that you've inked it up really, really well. And they did design this ink to be, how they described it, is more viscous, and so I don't think you have to feel super rushed to get this through your machine. I've been just taking my time to really make sure that I've inked everything up really well. And one of the reasons why I think they went with the smaller form factor rather than the large ink pads is precisely so that you can actually get it, like, you have a little bit more control over, I feel, a smaller ink pad, and being able to really get that ink where you want it to go. If you see some spots that don't have quite as much ink as other spots. So there's that. And then this is your oh, you know, I think I'm going to put my tape on this edge and that edge because it's not quite as close to the design on those. And that's the only thing that you kind of have to maybe keep in mind when you're putting this tape down, is you don't want it to actually go over the plate. And then we just click this on. There's magnetic posts. don't push down just yet. And then you want to take this whole thing and then run it through your manual die cutting machine. So I've got the Platinum Spellbinders Platinum machine. I have the large one, but it will go through the Platinum 6 as well. And so let's see what we've got. Let's see. Check that out. Really, really awesome. Man, it's just so perfect every time. Really, really love it. Okay, I'm really curious. I'm not that surprised anymore because I've been doing a lot of better pressing lately, and I'm not super surprised by the fabulous results because I've always been using the BetterPress ink. But it's going to be interesting to see what how this compares to the other inks. So I'm going to put BP on the back here for BetterPress so that when we start comparing, we know what's what. And then what I want to do is clean this with the recommended cleaner. And I forgot to mention the in my first video when I filmed my out of box, just straight out of the box using it for the first time, I didn't mention that the reason why I'm so impressed by this is because I'm a person who kind of struggles with stamping sometimes, getting a really nice crisp image, and so that's why I was so impressed that this just worked beautifully the first time, right out of the box. And so that's one of the things that really, if you're thinking about, well, how is this different from stamping, I kind of feel like that's a major difference. Besides the effect and the look that you get, because it is very, it's got a very debossed, well, not very, but it is debossed, and so that on its own makes it very special and kind of unique and different. But then there's, besides the design, which, you can get these really fine, intricate lines, which some stamps have, but they might be a little bit harder to get all of that fine detail as compared to this. And if you look at some of these really fine lines in the poinsettias, look at those leaves and how thin some of those lines are. So really, really fabulous. And now I'm gonna try VersaFine Onyx Black because this is my favorite stamping ink, mostly because I have a lot of success with this ink. I use it for my sentiments. I use it for when I am doing coloring with anything that's water-based, and often, especially with sentiments, I can stamp just with a block. I don't even bother with a stamp positioning tool because I have that much confidence in it. This inked up really well, by the way. So I have high hopes that this is going to work really well. Okay, so I'm gonna get my panel centered here. And then we'll give this a run through the machine. So there's that. Okay. I'm a little bit nervous, but I have high hopes. And I'm only going through the one direction one time and I'm pulling it out. I'm not going forward and backward. And let's see. Look at that. Pretty good. Okay, here's something I'm noticing. Alright. There's a little bit of, a little bit of bleeding, and I don't know, maybe this wasn't completely dry after. Oh, that's a good point. I don't know that, I'm gonna give that a second try, because right after I cleaned it, I inked it up, and I'm wondering if I got a little bit of bleeding, not really bleeding, but there's some fuzzies where it's inked outside the lines. I think you can notice it best in this area here. I think there's a potential, but let's see if it's because I cleaned it and then, but I didn't dry it super well. So I'm not gonna clean this with solution. Oops, I moved that. Just gonna make sure I found a dry spot of my cloth, and I'm gonna move this back. We'll try that again. We're gonna give gonna give my favorite ink a second try here. All right. I'll be honest, I would not be surprised if other inks don't perform as well. Just because if it took special formulation to get the results that Spellbinders wanted, it's not surprising that they didn't already, test everything on the market. I think that would have been easier than having to formulate their own special inks. So, but we'll see. All right, I'm gonna do this again. And it does look over inked. It looks like it's gotten more ink than the BetterPress ink actually kind of covers the plate. So I'm not too surprised if the over inking is maybe what we're seeing. Maybe I have to be a little bit more light-handed. Yeah, I still have some of that. You see right there? But it's still very crisp, it's still very detailed, and it's only in sort of these little areas there. So that might take a little bit more experimentation in terms of getting the right touch. So I'm going to put VF for VersaFine. And let's do that on this as well. VersaFine. And I'll do a comparison at the very end, just so we can look at everything. And let's get this cleaned off. So let me know in the comments below if you got the BetterPress, if you've played with it, what your thoughts are on it. And as I'm doing this series, also, if you have some questions, maybe you haven't purchased it, but you're holding out because you're not too certain about some aspect, or you want to see me try or do another test, just let me know. I am happy to do that and test out. If I have the materials, I'm happy to take requests for other things to test. So far, what I've done is I've tested the BetterPress with a different brand of cotton, 100% cotton card. That's what I'm using, and that seems to yield pretty similar results. I'm getting ink all over. This took a lot of ink. I've tested different cardstock, just regular cardstock, not the 100% cotton paper, but different cardstock, to see how that fares, and it did pretty well. It transferred pretty well. I tried cardstock that was just over in terms of thickness, 120-pound cover weight as compared to 118, and then 100 as compared to 118, and the inked impression transferred just beautifully. I mean, it pressed beautifully. You just don't get as much of a deboss, which isn't too surprising with the thinner 100-pound cardstock. So that's not too surprising. And then as well, I have the most fun one that I've done so far, I think, is the heat embossing. So I stamped with Versamark clear ink, stamped beautifully, and then I used different embossing powders. And so that one I was really intrigued by the results from. All right, so I'm gonna do one more in kind of real time because we have a lot of inks here, and then I'm going to kind of speed this up and then show you the final results. So I've tried one pigment. Let me try one hybrid, and then I'll try one dye ink on camera, and then I will speed things up. Okay, so I'm gonna give my favorite hybrid ink, the Nuvo one, a try. And let's just make sure, get a dry spot here, really make sure this is nice and dry. And then for the dye ink, I will use the Hero Arts dye ink. And then for this, for the stack of what remains, I'm gonna do a sped up, and then rejoin you at the end with a voiceover just to show each one and kind of talk through final thoughts and conclusions. So you might be able to see on camera see how it's not grabbing the ink quite as much, and this is what I'm wondering. And this is a hybrid ink, which is a cross between pigment ink and dye-based inks, and I'm skeptical. It is grabbing, but I'm skeptical that this is going to look as nice, but we shall see. In general, what I have found with my hybrid inks is nothing is as dark and as crisp as VersaFine. There's just no comparison. That's why the VersaFine Onyx Black is my favorite. And the Nuvo hybrid ink is great as a hybrid ink. I love it for when I'm stamping, but I don't know exactly what medium I'm going to use to color with. That's the benefit of a hybrid ink, is that if you're going to use alcohol markers or water-based markers, it'll work equally good for both, and you should get none to very minimal bleeding. All right, so let's see. Oh, that worked pretty well. Yeah, I still get right down in the same area, which interestingly enough doesn't happen up here, which is like the same design. You can see there's none of the excess extra ink. There's just a little bit of it here. So it's kind of curious because it's on the bottom of both, this side too. But hey, look at that. It is a pretty nice, look how well that pressed. Really nice. But we'll do a quick comparison. See how dark the ink is on this one as compared to on this side. This is the BetterPress ink. And if we even want to compare to, this is VersaFine, which looks gorgeous. VersaFine ink is it's so great. If it didn't have those little areas, I mean, you can see how this doesn't have any of that fuzziness. So Really, really interesting. Okay, so let me do, let me label this. So this is Nuvo. And then I wanted to do one dye-based ink as I talk through it just in real time, and then we'll speed things up and get through this stack. Because otherwise this video, there's a lot here I want to test out, so if I sat here and chatted through doing it in real time, I think this would end up being a really long video. And I actually might run out of things to say. So, alright, let's get this nice and clean. This is just me being nitpicky, cleaning the chase, because that's not going to transfer. I mean, there's enough thickness. It's just I want to keep things nice and tidy. Alright, so now let me try to guess. So it's at the bottom, so it's these ones here. I'm gonna really give this a good clean. Really make sure whatever is going on in these areas, I really want to make sure it's clean for my next test. Because if it did get over inked, maybe I didn't clean it well enough when I tried the Nuvo. Okay, so cleans really well. I've even gotten like down here the white areas all inked up as I've been cleaning, but alright, then let's get a dry spot because I want to make sure I dry this really well. Now the dye-based ink, this is the one that I'm most skeptical of because one of the benefits, one of the characteristics of a dye-based ink is that it dries instantly, kind of, when it hits the paper. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to dry instantly on your press plate, but it will, it's not as sticky of an ink. So I've got it in Raspberry Jam here. I hope this is the dye-based. I often confuse these two. I wish Hero Arts did better labeling. But ooh, look at that. Oh, I think this is gonna work well. It's inking up really well. Oh, I am excited. Can you see that? Oh, I just moved. I might have to move my... Oh yeah, this is sliding. I'll get back to that. Nudge that back in place. Yeah. I think this is gonna look good. Well, first off, I think it's gonna look good because I think the red's gonna be kind of nice. Ooh, you know what? Actually, I take that back. Before I go into speed up, I'm gonna try one of the Delicata inks because that's the metallic ink. It's also a pigment ink, but I just think it's gonna look good. So I want to do that. Yeah, that's looking good. I'm taking the non-pointy side of my pokey tool. Try to nudge this back. Alright. Oh, and see, this isn't very... There we go. Make sure the sentiment is really got good coverage. And I always want to double check my fingers so I don't accidentally transfer ink onto these panels. And there that is. Okay. Alright, let's get that through. This is going to be interesting. Okay, so... Oh, I'm nervous. There's still a lot of ink there. Okay. Yeah. Not. What a bummer. It's pretty, but look at how much feathering there is here. I guess that's a good way of describing it. Just a lot of feathering. It's even up here too. And yeah, there's a lot of it. Yeah. Dye base, we'll continue. I've got a couple of other dye base things to try. It transferred okay. It's not the cleanest transfer. But it's complete. I mean, there's no spotty areas. It's just that if we're being really nitpicky, there's that feathering where the original, you know, is super clean. So, good to know, good to know. Sometimes it's helpful to see this and then you really have an appreciation. That's kind of what I'm coming to understand. Really have an appreciation for what went into formulating the ink and why it exists. It's not it and I'm not employed by Spellbinders and they don't pay me to say anything specific, but doing this now, one of the things I'm kind of coming to the realization on is that it's not like a marketing ploy just to get you to buy another thing, that is specially made by them. Looks like they really made it because there was the need to get the kind of results that they wanted. So, like, big thanks to Spellbinders for taking the time to do that, and I mean, I still think, it's useful to know kind of the not the limits, but just to explore and experiment with different things. Maybe somewhere in this set of inks here we'll find something that does work just as well. But so far, that hasn't happened. So, but we'll see. And I know this is red. Red ink does tend to kind of stain, but I don't think that's going to transfer. I think it's clean. It's just sort of stained the plate, which I'm not worried about. I just want to make sure. Do want to make sure that it is clean though. So. And if you really wanted to make sure, you could just run a panel through, make sure that nothing transferred. And the deboss by itself is actually kind of nice. So let's do that. Let's just do that since I mentioned it. This is sliding around a little just because I have some of the cleaner under here. Let's wipe that up. So, if you are ever in doubt whether you've got it like super clean, that's the nice thing about having this huge stack of cotton paper. And that's the other thing, maybe these inks will work a little bit better on the actual Spellbinders cotton paper panel, but I'm using all the same paper panels for all of my inks, so it's going to be like an apples to apples comparison with regards to that. But I'm not doing this testing to be a definitive statement on how well so I did get a little, that wasn't completely dry, but see, nice and clean, and you just get a deboss design. So something to play with. Let's see, that was over here, so let me wipe that a little bit better, really make sure it's dry here. Okay, so I wanted to do Delicata ink before. Let's do the red. I liked how that red one came out. Okay, so I'm gonna try not to be too heavy-handed. See if that helps. But I do want nice coverage. This looks like it's going to look good. I don't know how the shimmer is gonna look, whether the shimmer is going to really come across on this. Mostly because there are such fine lines. Usually with the shimmer, you can appreciate it more or see it better when it's a little bit more of a solid stamp. But we will see in a moment. So let's get this on here. Okay. And I am running it through kind of not a snail's pace, but not super fast. I'm not like super cranking it through. I'm just kind of leisurely cranking it through. Okay, so let's see. Oh my. That's really beautiful. And it's gone. See down here, there's no fuzzies. Oh, this might be the best one yet. Oh, I'm glad I did this one in real time. Look at that. Super clean. Really beautiful. Picked up look at how fine these lines are and how that's pretty good, folks. Delicata ink. Yeah. I mean, nothing's gonna be quite as striking as black, but that's pretty darn close. I mean, it's not as like as deep or saturated, but just in terms of the transfer, the press is beautiful. It's perfect. Oh, that's really cool. Now I gotta do the gold. Okay, so let me label this. This was Delicata. And alright, I am going to speed this up, and then I will rejoin at the end and show you real time each of the samples for all that's left that I want to test. But let me put some music on, and then let's speed through the pressing of the rest of the inks. Okay, I'm back now with all of these inks stamped or pressed out, and let's do a bit of a comparison. So, here is what we have. This is the Spellbinders July 2023 BetterPress Club Kit, the first press plate to release as part of the new monthly club, and it is absolutely gorgeous. This is actually with the BetterPress ink, but onto the 100% cotton paper that I bought off of Amazon. So this is not the Spellbinders cotton paper, but rather what I have purchased online because I was able to get it at a nice, affordable, big block of it. And so that really helps to make videos like these possible because it's much more affordable. And in my earlier video, as I mentioned, I did do a comparison between this cotton paper and the Spellbinders cotton paper, and there are some differences, but by and large, this works pretty well. So take that as a baseline. This is the BetterPress ink. So I tested a variety of pigment inks because there's different formulations of inks, and of course within each category, every brand formulates it a little bit differently. And in fact, the Tsuneko inks, there's even a variety of pigment inks within the one brand. So they're not all, it's not to say that they're all made equal, but generally speaking, you have your pigment-based inks, which are made from pigments are basically kind of larger particles, and they are kind of from a material that is actually like a natural material that has color to it. And generally speaking, pigment inks are a little bit stickier and they sit on the surface of your papers. And I have a variety here. So I've got VersaFine. And this one, the sentiment stamped out beautifully, and I think that's going to be the case for pretty much all of them. But where I had problem areas, if there were problem areas, is in sort of this detail area here. See how there's a little bit of feathering, a little fuzziness? This is the same design, but you don't really, I mean, there's a little bit of it, but not a ton. But the two big problem areas were down here. So that's why when I go and do the side-by-side comparison, I'm going to be examining this area closest. But in terms of the sentiment, though, because not all press plate designs are going to be the same. So some of your inks might work perfectly well for some designs versus others. So here's VersaFine on the sentiment versus BetterPress. So it seems this is like a little bit thicker, a little bit bolder, whereas the BetterPress really does a good job of with this scripty font here. It does a really good job of capturing thin lines and thick lines. So you can really see that there's that contrast between thin and thick. Here, this is VersaFine. It feels like everything is kind of the same line weight. Not exactly the same, but there just isn't as nice of that contrast. So a little bit of a difference there. So I would not necessarily, I mean, this is just one pass through, so it's not a definitive statement on any of these inks, but I would say that's not the most successful. This is, and I was so surprised I did it twice, because I really wanted VersaFine to work, but it's my favorite stamping ink, especially for sentiments, but you can still see there's some of that feathering there. So that was VersaFine. This one is VersaFine Claire, And same thing on the Sentiment. This is a separate press plate, worked just fine, but you don't get the really nice super thin lines. But it presses beautifully. A little bit of fuzzies there, and a lot more down here. So not super clean down there. So again, I would put these in the maybe if I played around with it, maybe there's some designs that work better than others. Then I tried two Delicata inks, also from Student Go, and look at that. Beautiful, clean, no feathering, a really clean press. It does not have much of a shimmer to it. Delicata inks generally have a little bit of a shimmer, but I wasn't too surprised that it didn't. One, because of having done some heat embossing and seeing how that reacts to the cotton paper. Two, because generally the shimmer is harder to really appreciate with thin lines, but this pressed beautifully. I would actually, by comparison, you can see how lovely the details are, and it's pretty crisp. It's not as saturated in terms of like how much pigment, and it might be just a matter of the actual color, but it looks beautiful. Now here's the same Delicata ink in gold, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's really pretty. Again, really clean, crisp press. You get all of the fine line details, and you get the thin and the thick lines in the brush lettering. A nice subtle deboss. Really great. No complaints on Delicata ink. It's just that it's not as saturated. It's a little bit I don't know if muted is the right word, but it's not quite as bold. Part of that's because it's not black, and so there just isn't as much contrast with the paper. But as well, I wonder if it's just because this has been formulated for like that extra pigment and extra saturation. I mean, this is a dye-based ink, the BetterPress one, but it's just more saturated with color. So okay, so there are those. I would say Delicata inks are good. So I like those. And then we have Versacolor as another range of pigment ink from Student Echo, and this also is beautiful. You get clean lines, beautiful transfer, really saturated. You get the thin and the thick. Nothing's really gonna beat the saturation of black, the contrast of black on this sort of off-white color, but pretty darn good. Really, really loving it. I mean, look at all of that detail there. Super clean. So that's a win. I would say that's a win. Making a pile of what I think I will go to again, and here I'll leave the ones where I feel like I'll try it again, but I'm a little less confident. I'm glad that I'm using this design because it does have a lot of good things to kind of test because of how thin some of the lines are, how thick some of the lines are. So I think that gives us a good idea for what might work a little bit better versus what might not. This one is the Hero Hues Pigment ink, and on the Sentiment it does beautifully. So I think that's one of the conclusions I'm coming to, which is that on a very open design like this, it works great. So far everything has worked great, but as I mentioned, the problem areas are where we get into some of these really fine lines that are close to each other, and you get that like feathering. So it's not to say that maybe if you tried this on the Spellbinders, 100% cotton paper, maybe you'll get better results, because if you look up here, it's the same design, but I don't get much of it. A little bit, but not as much. So it's not across the board in all areas. It's just some areas, and for whatever reason, this area here and this area here are the two kind of problem areas. And so I am going to put Hero Hues as a, maybe on some occasions, some places that'll work well. This one, beautiful. This is Versa Magic, also from, this is a Dewdrop ink. This is also from Sudaneko Magic Crafts. So look at that. Pretty clean across the board. Really beautiful. Nice color saturation too. So that's this right here. Versa Magic. And this is actually a chalk, has a chalky finish, and usually those are a little bit, they look a little bit more muted, but compared to the Versacolor, it's not all too different, just in terms of color saturation. And so like it, I love it. So so far Imagine Craft inks have they're really good. They're doing pretty good here. Their Delicata is good, their Versacolor is good, Versa Magic is good. I'm loving that I'm finding some inks that work really well, because now it just expands the color range of what I can do. Now let's see, this is Altenew dye ink, and look at that. It's pretty good. Just a couple of spots, if you can see right there. A little bit of ink that kind of went outside the lines there. But by and large, really good. You get the thick and the thin in the script, which is really nice. Just a little bit of bleeding or feathering in some areas, but not too bad. So I would say this is kind of a middle ground. I'll leave that in the middle there, start shifting things over. This is another dye ink. This is from Hero. And this one, I think I did this twice. So this one was pretty bad. You see a lot of feathering. But I think this was because I didn't really dry the press plate very well. So I did it a second time. The second time is definitely better. So again, sentiment pretty good. A little bit unevenness here. This should be the same kind of line weight, but it's a little bit spotty. And there is a little bit of feathering down here. So this is a dye ink that I would say is just okay. It's not gonna be my go-to. The green was good. Okay, now we're moving into hybrid inks. So dye inks, I only did 2. I was actually kind of skeptical that they would work, so we are 50-50 on those. Maybe I'll try some other dye inks. Dye inks are water-based, and they actually absorb into the paper. And so they work pretty well, and of course the BetterPress is a water-based dye ink. So I'm not too sure why I was skeptical that it would work, being that the BetterPress is dye-based, but that worked out pretty well. At least the Altenew one did. This one is, now we're getting into hybrid inks. So hybrid inks are a bit of a combination between pigment and dye-based. And here's where really I think there's going to be a lot of differences, because who knows, how they're formulating this, how much of it is a pigment versus how much of it is dye. But the sentiment, beautiful, Really, really good. A little bit of feathering, not a ton, just a little bit. And so I would say not, this is kind of in the maybe pile too. Like, I think maybe they're inking it a little bit with a lighter hand might prevent some of that feathering, but I would put, that was the Graphic 45 hybrid, so I would put that in the middle ground there. Then moving into the Nuvo, there is wait, this is the Nuvo, the Black Shadow, and this is almost it's, I'll bring up the BetterPress one for comparison because it's almost like a gray. But there is a little bit, just a smidge of feathering. Not a ton, but definitely it's there. Top and bottom, there's a little bit. But look at how generally this Nuvo is not as dark as my favorite VersaFine, but hopefully that shows like how much darker the BetterPress ink is compared to the hybrid Nuvo ink. So I still would say I don't think I'm gonna go to that one because it's not super saturated and it's getting some fuzzies. This is another Nuvo hybrid, so in theory the same formulation as the previous, and really loving how the script is. It really holds the thin and the thick lines, but problem area here with the poinsettia and a little bit of that fuzziness, the feathering. This might be just me not inking it consistently, but there is a little bit of spottiness there. And it's okay. It's not, but still wouldn't be my favorite. So I'm going to put that over there. Then we have Gina K Amalgam ink. This is also a hybrid, and this worked. Now, I have to say, I did this during the speed up where it was just set to music, and I have to say, when I was inking it up, it felt the most like the press plate, it felt like it was taking to the ink the most similarly as compared to the BetterPress ink. So this actually feels like it's really good. Look how thin that is, and then the nice thick for comparison. And here it is compared to the BetterPress. Again, nothing's really beating the BetterPress in terms of just how crisp it is and just how dark that ink is. I mean, that is, you cannot compare. It just blows it away. But this is a pretty clean press though. I would go to this again. In fact, I'm gonna put it over here. I would use that again for sure if I had other colors, because in the black I'd rather just use the BetterPress ink because it's so much darker and the color is just so much more saturated. I don't know if Gina K's other inks are the amalgam, but if you didn't have the BetterPress ink, I think that would work pretty well as a good black ink. Because so far, none of my other ones I have in black. And then this last one is the Hero Arts. I think this is also a hybrid ink. And there's the sentiment's pretty good. You have nice thin lines, nice thick lines. You've got, it's pretty good actually. I mean, there's a little bit of feathering. You have to look closely, but it's there. But for the most part, it's pretty good. This there's some feathering, but I think this is because it looks like it's not red. I think that's just from not cleaning it super well, the impression before. But I think this would work. I think that would work if it was nice and well cleaned. And so that's so far the conclusions that I've drawn from all of my testing. So I feel like if you're looking for more colors, I'm sure Spellbinders is going to be releasing more of inks. But if you already have a lot of inks in some of these brands, I would definitely give it a go. Give it a try. Versacolor I felt worked really well. The Delicata inks worked really well. And Versa Magic I thought worked really well. Gina K Amalgam, pretty good. And I believe the Hero Art's the one with this design, which I think is a hybrid ink. But somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that. I just wish they labeled these. Like, I can't even tell it's Hero Arts. Except if I, just remembered it was. These inks I felt did decently well. Maybe there were some spotty areas, so maybe there's a little bit of how I ink that might actually resolve some of those issues, but the Ulta New Dye ink and the Graphic 45 hybrid ink pad, pretty good. Got pretty good results there. And then some of the ones that didn't do super great, would not be my go-tos, would be the VersaFine, both of the VersaFines. I did not get super great results there. The Hero Hues Pigment, also not super great results. And this is, I think, the Hero dye-based. But again, correct me if I'm wrong. It's this design of... I know this is Hero, I just don't know which formulation. And then the Nuvo Hybrid, I think, did as well as some of the ones over here. So that is the result of it's just one press of each of these inks. And so this video isn't meant to be a definitive statement on any of these different brands and the results that you could be getting. Like I mentioned, I want to be careful to just say that I'm not using the Spellbinders cotton paper, so you might get different results just depending on the different paper stock that you're using. And as well, it might be worth trying different colors. Maybe different colors are would give you different results. My conclusion from all of this testing is one, I think you'll get your best results using the actual BetterPress inks. So if you want something surefire, stick to their inks. They did specially formulate it for the press plates, and having done, now how many pressings, I can understand and appreciate why it needed to be specially formulated to get the results that you're able to get. And so if you want something surefire, stick to that. However, my takeaway from having done this is, one, I have an appreciation for that, whatever went into actually formulating that. Two, I do think that by and large they all worked. They all worked pretty well. I think that if you're gonna be really scrutinizing, yeah, the ones over here weren't perfect, but they had some areas of a similar design that did look really good. So I would say use what you have, especially if you do have a very specific color that you want to use on your project and it's just not available in the BetterPress ink, or something equivalent isn't available. Play with what you have and experiment with it a little bit, because I wouldn't say that any of these are ones that I would just never use again. They all, maybe this one comes the closest to one that, and that's the Raspberry Jam here. It's just the most fuzzy out of all of them, but the rest, especially on the sentiments, I think all of them did pretty okay on the sentiments. None of them were like a complete fail. So I do feel like, while some are definitely more successful than others, this is another one that maybe I wouldn't, VersaFine Claire, that's not super crisp either. I'm really I'm not gonna give up on the VersaFine though, because I honestly think that I would put that sort of at the bottom of my list of go-to inks. But I love VersaFine so much. It's really hard for me to believe. So I might play with that a little bit more and see if it's just my technique. Maybe I just over inked. But that's my takeaway is that um everything's worth an experiment. They all worked really well, at least for the sentiment, to varying degrees, but there weren't really any problem areas. It's just by comparison where I feel like if you saw how the BetterPress handled the sentiment, you could see the difference, but none of them were bad. So I think on an open design, meaning the lines are pretty far apart, I think that all of them did decently well. Where you see a lot of lines that are close together, like in the poinsettia and in this detailing around the holly berries, that's where I found the most kind of differentiation. That's where I found the most differences between the inks, and you do have to kind of really look closely to see it. So it's just if you're going to be really nitpicky, and in particular if you sell, because I think if you sell your cards, you may want to have that level of scrutiny. And so I would say definitely experiment. These ones are my favorite. And I'm happy that I actually have, a nice range of different colors, especially Versacolor, Versamagic. I'm really happy to see our did really well. And the Delicata ink's really happy because I do have a nice range of colors there. So it just opens up the possibilities, honestly. And so I think if you have another line of ink, I know there are more lines of inks out there. I just don't happen to have them. So I tested what I do have and I'm really happy now because I now know what I think I can go to for nice intricate designs, and now I know most sentiments I think would work well for any of these inks. So it's good to know that I'm not limited to the BetterPress inks, and I'm really happy. What am I gonna do with all of these? Well, what I think I will do is the ones that look nice, what I'll do is actually mount these panels onto a card base and create some gift sets. So I like to give out, when I send out my advent calendars, since those need to come before December 1st, I like to also give out some gifts that can be used that holiday season. And so just gifting maybe sets of 5 Christmas cards, for example, so that it's they're not getting it on Christmas Day and then they can't use it until the following Christmas. So that's what I might do with these, is to just create little sets of them and give them out as holiday gifts this year. And then of course some of these I'll use as my holiday card as well. So it's really nice. It's pretty easy to make some pretty fast gift sets using this press plate. So really, really love it. And I hope that you found this interesting. If you've found some inks that worked well for you and some different brands that worked well, leave a comment, and that way we can all kind of benefit from your testing as well. And I think what I might do next is coloring. So how does the BetterPress ink work when coloring with your Copics? I know it's not meant to be Copic friendly, but I still want to give it a try. And then different water-based inks as well. So that'll be my next little test, is different coloring media and how it reacts to the BetterPress. And that's the other reason to I wanted to actually test some of these, because some of the hybrid inks like the Gina K might be great if you want to do alcohol marker coloring, because the BetterPress ink is not really formulated to be the most ideal for that. And so that if you kind of expand out into different types of ink formulations, you might be able to also branch out to different coloring media too. So, so that'll be my next test. But if there's anything else that you'd like to see me test with the BetterPress, any techniques or any other type of media supplies, just let me know. And I would be happy to do that if I have the supplies and I can. Thanks for joining me today, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.